And I'm a neuroscientist by training, so I've spent 40 years working on brain, and I currently teach in teach physiology, that's liver, heart, lung, everything, all to do with biology in the medical school. The title of my talk is slightly different. Oh, and sorry about that. I changed the title from my article, my little post, Brain, Culture and Chaos, just to make it more suitable for the slides. So before I start, I just want to make a statement here, because I know I'm in front of a very eclectic audience. So can we really science culture and chaos? Are these questions off limits to science? When I say that can we science culture and chaos, I mean that there is no question that is immune, or at least can be benefited by the scientific approach. I don't mean that the scientific approach is an all-powerful approach and that it's the only way to address these questions, or even necessarily that it is the best approach. It's just that there is no realm that is fundamentally off limits or unapproachable by science. Even scientists themselves, the late Stephen Jay Gould, who had been an evolutionary biologist, he wrote in his thesis, Non-Overlapping Magisteria, it's called, you may know of that, suggests that questions related to truth, culture, reality, are really not the domain of science, they are the domain of religion. However, our scientific understanding of human psychology is massively helpful in understanding human motives and values. And science may not answer every question, but scientific habits like reason, rigour, evidence-based thinking, and active and repeated questioning of your worldview are powerful tools in any type of inquiry. And I will provide that kind of scientific angle, so just so you know where I'm coming from. This is a kind of a scientific view. I'll also provide some maybe solutions that help us cope with chaos as we perceive it. I don't know what's happened there. A bit of chaos has now entered the scene. I can't complain. I'm giving a talk on chaos. It's on theme, that's okay. Do I need to touch it every now and then, is it? Or just
I'll kind of...
Okay.
It should kind of, when you're going through the head.
Okay, so the subheading there is, it's not what happens, it's how you understand it. Epictetus, 330 BC, a Greek philosopher, Epicurean philosophy, he taught that people are not disturbed by things themselves, but by the views they take of those things. So that's a very ancient type of philosophy, and I'll provide a modern scientific view of how not to be overwhelmed by chaos, how to look at chaos with insight and be able to be empowered by chaos even. So it's an empowering, I hope will be an empowering presentation for you. Okay, so very briefly, we all possess and we use a machine called a brain. It's a predictive machine. It allows us to predict what's going to happen next. We use the 5 senses, seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling. More recently, we put pain in there as a separate sense to touch. We use the 6 senses now, 5 originally in the Greek philosophy, but now 6 senses to guide us through the world. In a sophisticated way, we can predict the world. So let's just talk about the machine first. I'll talk about the brain first, then we'll talk about a culture, and then we'll talk about chaos. And we'll hopefully give you an insight into how you can use your brain to navigate your way through what you would perceive as chaos. So 3 pounds, 1.3 kilograms, quite a heavy organ actually between your ears. It also, in terms of size, about a medium-sized cauliflower. Some people have a large cauliflower-sized brain, others have a smaller one. It doesn't actually matter. Nothing unusual yet about the brain. The brain, let's take another organ in the body, the liver, here on the right. The liver also weighs about 3 pounds, and the area of it's flattened out. would roughly be the same area as a medium-sized cauliflower. So nothing unusual about our brains yet. So what about what's inside the brain? The number of neurons, or these are brain cells, neurons. There's about 100 billion neurons in the brain. Now, scientists are always looking for patterns, and chaos produces patterns. So we are interested in the patterns and chaos. The best example of chaos in an everyday sense is the weather. So we have chaotic weather patterns in the summer, and then we have a slightly different chaotic weather pattern in the winter. And therefore we can predict what type of weather, roughly speaking, what kind of weather we can predict. Due to that chaotic nature of chaos, the patterns it produces. So scientists are always looking for patterns. So 100 billion, where else does that occur in nature? There's 100 billion cells in your brain. Where else is that? There are actually 100 billion cells in your liver as well. So looking for patterns, where else does 100 billion occur in nature? There's 100 billion stars in the galaxy. We call the Milky Way. So you look up on a cloudless night, you'll see 100 billion stars. We orbit the closest star, which is our sun. But there are 100 billion other stars there. So that's another pattern that we can relate to. But there are also 100 billion stars, 100 billion cells in the liver. Now, so we still there's no difference between the brain and any other tissue. It's still ordinary in that sense. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting about the brain. If I was a cell in your body, let's say a liver cell or a brain cell or a skin cell, any ordinary cell in your body, I would have about 10 contacts or neighbours. So I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, one on top, 10 contacts. That bone, blood, skin, most cells in your body have these 10 contacts. But for the neurons don't have 10 contacts. You have 100 billion of them. Each neuron doesn't have 100 contacts. Each neuron doesn't have 1,000 contacts. Each neuron, and you have 100 billion, has 10,000 contacts. So they're not cubes or balloon-shaped type cells you think about. They're wiry structures. They have areoles, and they receive contacts, and then they electrically transmit information. They're unusual-looking beasts, these neurons. So each neuron has 10,000 contacts. Quick calculation. You have about 100 trillion contacts in your brain. Now, this is where the nervous system separates from all the other tissues in your body. It's highly connected, highly wired. 100 trillion contacts inside your head. Where else in nature does 100 trillion occur? There are 100 trillion cells in the human body. That's interesting. About 100 trillion cells in your body. 100 billion of which are neurons. Another 100 billion in the liver. It takes 100 trillion atoms to make a living cell. Okay, so scientists are always looking for patterns, and there'll be more patterns coming up shortly. But they're always because patterns can link us to some more fundamental truth. So we all have 100 trillion contacts in our head. So here's one neuron of the 100 billion, and it has 10,000 contact sites, A, B, C, D, E, F, off to the horizon, 10,000 contacts. Here's another neuron inside your head, and it also has 10,000 contact sites, A, B, C, D, off to that horizon. Now, A could go to D, and B can go to C. So the number of possible combinations of contacts in your head is 100 trillion to the power of 100 trillion. Now, don't even attempt to do that calculation. You'll fall off your chair. That is more than the number of elementary particles in the universe. So what I mean by that is that we all have 100 trillion contacts in our head, but no two human beings who ever lived in the past, who are living now, or who will ever live in the future will have the same combinations. You know how hard it is to win the lotto. I mean, you have 6 numbers. There's 42 balls. You get your 6 numbers and you try to match. And you could spend an entire lifetime and a fortune trying to match. Just that limited number. But so 100 trillion is impossible to reproduce. Now, also, there's one other thing. We all have 100 trillion contacts inside our head. But those contacts are constantly changing because the brain is plastic. So You can never say, this is a person. You cannot say that, this is a person. You are a rollout of changing contacts from the moment of conception to the moment of death. The contacts are changing. So, for instance, you can't raise your hand now and say, may I be excused? I'd say, why? My head is full. No, you don't make more contacts when you learn something. You break old ones that were not correct, and you strengthen new ones or existing ones that make them more correct. So we all have 100 trillion contacts inside our head. Some of us go and mold those 100 trillion contacts to become car mechanics, others become poets, musicians, academics, entrepreneurs. We all have 100 trillion contacts in our head, but they're constantly changing. You have a different combination at the age of 7. Then at 14, you have another different combination. Then at the age of 25, the combination is slightly different, and so on through your life. This is what we call learning, the making and breaking of the 100 trillion synapse. That's what makes you, you, and you're completely unique. In fact, the brain is the most complicated organ in the universe. So we can't see anything that even remotely compares to it. So now you've got it, okay? Now you understand how the brain is wired. So how do we use the brain then to interpret the world? So the brain is what we call a kind of a sphere. It has a sphere type shape, but it's really made of two hemispheres, two halves. Just like you have a right hand and a left hand, you also have a right side to your brain and a left side to your brain. You have a right leg and a left leg. So there's nothing unusual about this. You have two hemispheres, and I've just pushed back this side so you can see the cabling between the two spheres. They communicate with each other. Now, don't get me wrong. They both do more or less the same thing, both hemispheres, but there are subtle differences, and that influences how we look at the world. So mostly what the hemispheres, these cables do, is they're really saying to the other side, no, let me do it. No, don't interrupt. No, just let me do it. So that's when the right hemisphere says to the left, don't do it. And the left is saying to the right, no, leave me, I'll do it. So, but by and large, they're both doing 99% of the same thing, but there are subtle differences, and I'll show you what they are in real life. If you go to a GP, any doctor, they'll tell you, depending on which side is injured, the results are completely different. So we know that these hemispheres do have their own properties, although 99% of the time they do the same thing. So, okay, so let's take a look at an experiment done 2001 in Russia, where they injected an anesthetic there's two carotids. There's a carotid artery going up here, and there's a carotid artery going here. This is the eye, and this is the back of the neck looking down. So they can inject an anesthetic in and silence each hemisphere separately. The person is still awake, but half of their brain is anesthetized. And an anesthetized state is not death. It's not sleep either. It's in a state of suspended consciousness. There's no memory formation. And it's reversible. So what the scientists did was got a large number of people, injected them. So what you're seeing here, he showed them an image there, and he silenced alternative hemispheres and asked them to draw what they saw with each hemisphere silenced. Now, he was careful about left-handed and right-handed people as well, so he worked out which was the best hand for the person, so that didn't interact in this scenario. That was cancelled out. So here you can see where this is the left hemisphere working well, but the right hemisphere has now been anesthetized. So this is what the left hemisphere exclusively sees. Can you just take your left hand up and put it up to the left side of your head right now? So this is the side of your brain that interprets this tree in this way. Okay, now can you just put your right hand up to the other side? And this is what your right hand sees when it's looking at that image. The patients drew it. So I'm going to show you some other examples. So you watch for the pattern now. Watch for the pattern. There's clearly a difference in the way we perceive the world depending on which hemisphere we use. Once again, the left hemisphere working exclusively on its own. That's the right hemisphere anesthetized. And then corresponding here, the right hemisphere working alone when the left hemisphere is anaesthetized. Of course, in normal life, they both work together, but this is a scientific experiment. So this is revealing. Another picture here. So that was a crude drawing of a kind of a table with legs. It's a kind of a 3D effect there. The 3D effect is gone in the left hemisphere. However, the left hemisphere put in something very functional there that wasn't up there. It's kind of made it more functional. But here you have the 3D, pure 3D effect on the right. Very interesting views of reality. And then this is really what we found. We found that the left hemisphere breaks things into bits. So it's the logical, analytical, reductionistic view of the world, where the numbers are broken down and everything has to add up to 100%. The right hemisphere is the gestalt. Isn't that interesting? We now know that the right hemisphere is dominant in humans. So whenever you walk into a room, your right hemisphere looks around, like I did when I walked in here first. There was nobody here. I just walked in, and my right hemisphere said, subconsciously, I like this room. And it sent that information to the left hemisphere to analyze why I like it. And the left hemisphere said, you like this room because you like that colour, you like the atmosphere. And it sent it back to the right, and then the right hemisphere goes, now I know why I like this room. So, and you're looking for a house, you want to buy a house, and your partner says to you, well, what do you want? What do you want in the house? Say, I'll know it when I see it. That's exactly the way the right hemisphere works. It's gestalt. I'll know it when I see it. So it's the dominant hemisphere when it comes to interacting with the world. So the gestalt is important. It's dominant. Then we analyze it. Okay, let's go along the left here. Grasping. So the grasping reflex is on the left. Exploring on the right. Down to language. Language is almost exclusively on the left. And it's we call simile. It's a work of basic languages. He was angry like a lion. That's kind of basic sentence structure conveying information. Simile, it's called. But on the right, we have what's called metaphor. So what would a metaphor be? Well, you'd be in Danaher's later. Owen would stand up and say, the drinks are on the house. You know exactly what it meant. It doesn't mean the drinks are on the roof of the house. Okay. So it doesn't mean that. That's with the left hemispheres, and you know that that's a metaphor for something else. Okay, so we have two different ways of looking at the world, and then empathy. I suppose you call it connection or spirituality, empathy, how we connect to the world. We connect to inanimate objects on our left. So we connect to our car, our boat, our alarm clock that never let us down, our house or whatever, and we connect to animate objects, pets, other human beings on the right. So, we say that being male is slightly more this way. Being male is slightly more to the left. Females tend to have a bigger junction, corpus callosum between the two hemispheres. You can see that in a female brain. They have a bigger, thicker communication between the two hemispheres, so they can take in both bits of information and integrate them. But in males, it's thinner. This is a thinner band in males. So males often end up on this side. Females tend to have the whole, or even more towards the right sometimes. And that's why males and females, through evolutionary time, would have made good parents for the offspring, because they have different ways of looking at the world. Okay, this is from an evolutionary point of view. Okay, so now you understand that the balance in the hemispheres is very important. Right, coming to the last two slides now. Okay, so what do you see here? This isn't an IQ test. What do you see? H and 4. So that would be the classic gestalt. That's the right hemisphere. It's like you walk in and you see everything together and you work out H and 4. Why did you see H and 4? Because when you went to primary school, elementary school in North America, primary school here, you were taught the basic alphabet and you were taught to recognize numbers. So these are imprinted you are imprinted with this information, to recognize this pattern. Okay, so remember now, when you're born without language, you're born without culture, and you're born without creed. Those three things are imprinted upon you by culture. So we're on the culture bit now. We've done brain, we're on to culture now. So culturally, you recognized H and 4 because you went to elementary school and they told you that that shape is an alphabetical shape and that's a number shape. If you, let's say, were raised in the rural parts of outer Mongolia and you were shown this, you'd say, well, goalposts, bird standing on one leg, or something colloquial. It depends. So these are patterns that are imprinted on us. Now, there's a little bit more information going on in this slide, by the way. The right hemisphere has grasped it quickly, the gestalt. But do you notice there's something else going on in the slide as well?
Yes.
So the left hemisphere, now I didn't get a word in there, the right got it. The left hemisphere goes, oh, but there's E's here, and there's 8s there. So if you spotted the E's and the 8s first, then you're far on the left. So people who are very far on the left, we regard as, it's a spectrum. It starts with Asperger's and it goes all the way up through autism, all the way to schizophrenia, where actually it's all of this and everything else is broken. It's just bits and fragments. So now you see how certain brain conditions, like an overactive left hemisphere, you lose the gestalt. You don't get the joke. You don't get the joke when you have Asperger's. You don't get it. You get the logic, but you don't get the joke. Do you understand? So, through our lives we have this. Yeah, question. Is it okay to take a question on? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very big. So
maybe you don't get the joke on the right-hand side, but the Asperger's guys on the left are saying.
Yeah. Well, the Big Bang Theory kind of emphasized that.
No, that's a TV program drama. It's actually insulting people with
okay.
Asperger's.
Let's go back.
Okay. I mean,
Q&A at the end.
I'm just giving you a scientific analysis of how we're trying to understand this. So, of course we depend, and I mean most scientists are obsessed by this. The whole scientific rationale is the boots up, straps up thing. So you're talking to the converted actually. But anyway, I'm just giving you a kind of an insight really. So that's important then. The left hemisphere sees the detail, the right hemisphere sees the pattern, the gestalt. So coming to the final slide then. Oh yeah, the right hemisphere sees the whole before the picture gets broken up into the parts and then goes to the left. The left looks at the E's and the 8s and then it goes back to the right and then you can say the brain truly knows it then. Truly knows it. So you need both hemispheres. Okay, so that's the final then. So that's culture. That's culture. We're imprinted from birth by our culture. We're told how to communicate, alphabet, numbers, even belief systems. We're imprinted. It's not innate. It's not in our genes, okay? And then we have our brains, our left and our right hemisphere, to take from that these different dimensions of it. Okay, so here's something then that you're not wired for. You're wired to recognize the H and the 4. Now, what about this? This could be someone you're going to meet, some event that's going to happen, chaos of just a set of dots. So you're not wired for this. This is not a pattern you're wired for. So you have to look at it. Everyone is different now. No two human beings are wired to hunt. 100 trillion sinuses are not the same in everyone. So everyone is different. So you watch that. You can even go out of focus. It doesn't matter. It's not an analytical thing. It's just you look at it and you wait. Anybody see anything yet? Okay, some people see something.
Faces.
Some people see faces. Yes, I've heard that before. Murmuration. Some people see a waterfall. But it takes a while because there's no pattern here taught to you to recognize this. This is the chaos of everyday life, by the way. This is the chaos of everyday life. I'm just showing you visual metaphor here. So hands up people who see a dog. Right. It probably took some of you 10 seconds, maybe longer. Somebody may even suggested it and you kind of went looking for it and then you found it. So there is a dog here, a Dalmatian dog. This is a Dutch Gestalt image used in psychology. It's called the dog image. And the dog is sniffing and there's a curb here and there's a kind of a stand of trees up here. So the right hemisphere had to struggle a bit there. It got the H and the 4 very quickly because that's taught to you to recognize that for survival and communication. But it took a while for the right hemisphere to get the Gestalt. This is really what everyday life is like. This is what buying a house is like, trying to get a mortgage. This is how you interact with other human beings. You don't know what you're going to get. You know what you need, but you don't know what you're going to get. So this is a kind of metaphor for chaos. Now, just coming to the end. One of the most important, I've teaching medical schools for 40 years on different continents, and I've talked to psychiatrists, I'm a neuroscientist, psychiatrists and psychologists, and they said all of psychiatry and all of psychotherapy boils down to one question. And that question is, what is blocking me from what I need to know? So when people are faced with something, it's not that's the problem. This is not the problem. This is what it is. Ultimately, you have to have the insight to know that the solution is with you. So that's the fundamental question in all of psychiatry and all of psychotherapy. What is blocking me from what I need to know? Introspection. We knew the days of God were over when we discovered how the sun rises every day. I mean, we have monuments all over the countryside to God, the sunlight and the seasons and to the deity. But we knew that day was over when we figured out the solar system and the way we revolve around the star, and that's why the sun rises every day. Really, God is about introspection. Information you gather from yourself. Introspection, some informing yourself, intuition, teaching yourself. So this is what God really is, if you want to abstract it. It's now come down to the individual struggling with the world. So that's a very important insight. It mightn't have occurred to you, but equipped with that, you can actually take on a lot now. Because this is no longer threatening. It is a question of you trying to navigate your way through what's happening. So that's a valuable insight. It's kind of a protective cloak. You use it in different ways, but that's the way you navigate uncertainty. So here are the 3 books then you might be interested in. The Master and His Emissary, the pictures of the brain that I showed you come from that book. The emissary is the left hemisphere that goes off and is the diplomat. The master sends off, the right hemisphere sends off the emissary, but the emissary gets kind of high and mighty and tries to usurp the master. And that's happened a lot in politics, but it happens in the brain as well. You can be hijacked by your left hemisphere. Your left hemisphere is it's the right hemisphere that makes the initial decision, whether it likes something or not. And then the left hemisphere collaborates with that. But if your left hemisphere is dominant, you're heading for trouble. If society's left hemisphere is dominant, if the left hemisphere is dominant, you're going to have a dysfunctional society. So that's a very interesting book. The Archbishop of Canterbury said that this book was the most important book since The Origin of the Species by Charles Darwin. It's a big, thick book, 600-page book. Science cannot solve the ultimate mystery of nature, and that is because we ourselves are part of nature and therefore part of the mystery that we're trying to solve. That's a very right hemisphere. It's not logical. It's a very right hemisphere view of the world. The left hemisphere doesn't like that kind of talk. And this is a great one. Do you remember the 1970s when Jaws was out and the book was out? The big competitor to Jaws, that paperback, was this one, The Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It was so you see here the right hemisphere, the beauty, the right hemisphere, and then you have the left hemisphere, which is the analytical side. So you had motorcycles, they're beautiful instruments. They're poised on two wheels. They're extremely attractive. Their look, their power is amazing. It's awesome, really. But the real value is to also know how to maintain the bicycle as well, to know where the spark plugs are, to be able to keep it in that shape. So the real knowledge is combining beauty, but also reality, truth. And these two things then make the complete balanced life, the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere combining together. So that was the basis of that book. So that's something well worth reading. And then thinking fast. So the truth knocks on the door. That's a great one in the book. The truth knocks on the door and you say, go away, I'm looking for the truth. And so it goes away. Puzzling. So that's the paradox of our existence. You know, a reliable way. We have two ways of looking at the world. And then we have the Nobel Prize winner in the year 2000, Daniel Kahneman. Well worth looking at that book. If you're going on a long distance flight, take that book with you. There's some work in it. It's well worth. It's a good stretch for your brain. A reliable way of making people believe in falsehood is frequent repetition, because familiarity is not easy to deceive. If the more is often it's presented to you. Just on that final point, do you remember when you saw the dog? When you finally saw the dog, did you notice that you immediately negated what was there before? As far as you're concerned now, the dog was always there. No, it wasn't always there. You had to go looking for it. So this, even when we go out into an uncertain world, we crave certainty. The hallmark of mental health is openness to the new. So you need to have these chaotic uncertainty scenarios in front of you. And mentally healthy people challenge themselves, whether they're entrepreneurs or musicians or academics, they challenge themselves by approaching chaos, because they know that by approaching chaos, they learn more about themselves. It's a way of learning more about themselves. It's not so much the chaos. It's about how they can interpret. How is there some insight that they're missing? So this, even when we do that, we convert back and we become certain again. So this itch for power and certainty is dangerous. We see it in politicians. You know, the politician that says to you, I'll finish on this. Did you know that there's a major conspiracy going on and we're all in great danger? And people go, oh, I didn't know that. Don't worry. I know exactly how to deal with it. Oh, that's great. We'll vote for you then. So that's the itch for power and certainty. We be careful about this in society and in ourselves as well. We're constantly changing. We're changing our synaptic plasticity through our lives. And that's what mental health is, being open to the new. Thank you very much.